It's the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you prepared to hunker down this weekend? Dangerously cold temperatures descend today, and a cross-country winter storm promises to pound us with snow as early as Saturday evening. But hey, at least there's a road salt shortage. Sorry, was that just too Cleveland of me? Data centers are going to nearly double across the state in the coming years, including a new one in Canton. We worry about power outages due to storms. What impact will these data centers have on our grid and its ability to rebound from disaster? Cleveland has implemented a new parking policy in several areas of the city. Downtown, prices have gone up, and there's no break on the weekends. You park, you pay till 10 p.m. And Governor Mike DeWine has security provided by the Ohio Highway Patrol. A new bill would extend coverage to the lieutenant governor and gubernatorial candidates. So joining me to discuss those stories and a whole lot more, all the top news of the week from IdeaStream Public Media, reporter Gabriel Kramer. Hey, Gabriel.
Happy Friday, Mike.
Happy Friday to you. I always wait for that every Friday when you're here. I get a happy Friday, and I hope that becomes true. It'll be a cold Friday for sure. Mm-hmm. Also from the Canton Repository, reporter Katie Beyer joins us for the first time here on the Roundtable. Hey, Katie.
That's actually Kelly, but thank you.
I wrote it as Katie. I told her ahead of time.
Warn me.
I have nieces named Katie and Kelly.
Yes.
And I was going to mix up Katie and Kelly. And what did I do the first thing out of the gate?
Exactly.
Sorry.
I was prepared.
Sorry about that, Kelly. My bad. And I actually wrote it as Katie on my script as well. In Columbus, we have a woman who provides her own security. Her voice is registered as a lethal weapon. State House Bureau Chief Karen Kassler. Hey, Karen.
Hey, and by the way, my childhood nickname was Katie. So
oh God!
That just adds another thing in there, right?
Do not start with me. Katie bar the door. Pretty Katie. All those things. Okay. All right, let's get ready to roundtable. I am no weatherman, but here's some advice for you this weekend, for all of you guys. Stay indoors. Another cold snap is coming thanks to a big wave of Arctic air blowing into town today, and as early as Saturday night, we're getting socked with a snow band. It stretches across the nation. It won't spare us, though we are lucky to be on the snow side and not the ice side of that storm. What a perfect time for a road salt shortage, which Cleveland and other communities are dealing with. Remember, turn into the slide. Karen, this isn't just a Northeast Ohio and lake effect event. Most of everyone in Ohio is going to see something from this storm, and it has the governor's attention, too.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I think, about this storm is, I mean, first of all, the really bitter cold and wind chills are going to be bad. But the southern part of the state is going to get potentially more than the northern part of the state. So that obviously has Governor Mike DeWine and other state officials really looking at what the state can do here. So DeWine will be talking to reporters this afternoon along with some other people at the Emergency Operations Center that is in the northwest part of Columbus to try to explain exactly what the state's prepared to do to keep things going if indeed we get to blizzard conditions and you know, if the worst actually happens, at least when it comes to the forecast. I mean, we're talking about 6 to 10 inches in parts of the state, up to a foot in other parts of the state. So it's a lot.
Yeah, and we're used to it here a little more so, I think, than Columbus. Not like you never have weather, but it's a bigger deal, it seems, Columbus and South. Yeah.
It is. It feels like everybody forgets how to drive. And, you know, when you start talking about, like, the southern part of the state, where you've got lots of roads that are difficult to access, that aren't easy in regular conditions. And you mentioned the salt shortage. I mean, ODOT says it's got about, I think, 500,000 tons of salt. That's for state routes and highways, though. That's not for municipalities. And then they've got about 10.5 million gallons of de-icer. But again, you know, getting to some of these areas might be a challenge. And so this could potentially be difficult for people who really are snowed in for a long period of time. In a way, it's good it's happening on the weekend, though it may not be so great for others.
Yeah, for sure. And Gabe, about that salt shortage, I just had a friend of mine text me listening to the intro to the show and said, how can there be a salt shortage? If only we had a salt mine, like right under the lake near us.
Right, exactly.
And we do. I know it's not just as easy as, you know, bringing it up from that in that minute, but why do we have a salt shortage? What's going on?
So the salt is distributed by a company called Cargill. Cleveland, the city of Cleveland had an order put in for more salt in August, and Cargill is saying that because of an early round of winter, that the distribution had to take priority elsewhere at the time or earlier in the season. So Cleveland is currently sitting on 6,000 tons of salt, which sounds like a big number. It sounds like a lot of salt.
That's one storm's worth.
But that's one storm's worth
and
of
maybe
salt.
not a major storm.
And probably not a major storm, which we are anticipating having some pretty hefty if not snow, a lot of cold weather, but we're going to have both of it in the next week and a half at least. ODOT is saying that they have about 32,000 tons of salt for what they're calling District 12, which includes Cuyahoga County, Geauga County, Lake County. And they say that's plenty for what they're covering, which includes highways,
Right.
not East 14th Street behind us.
And speaking of that, so the city says what they're going to do is prioritize the main avenues. So you would see more likely Euclid get salted,
Right.
but not 14th Street.
Right, exactly. And that perhaps might mean downtown and maybe some neighborhoods that see less car traffic.
So what are we going to do about that? Kelly, what's your plan this weekend? You just going to stay off the road?
I'm staying holed up in my house under a nice big cozy blanket.
That's smart. And Gabriel?
I love that. I love that as well. That's what I'm going to be doing. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't have these cozy homes. So I spoke with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless yesterday, who gave me some information. So they have this new seasonal shelter that is open to be a shelter from 2 weeks ago until April, and they said that that's been really a great success to helping bring people off the streets, people who need a place for shelter. They were scheduled to be open every day from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m., but they've actually been opening earlier to let people in come in earlier. One cool thing about the shelter, which holds about 45 people and hasn't been at capacity, but has been close to capacity the last week and a half, is that people it's not a first come first serve basis. People they're part of a system. People are kind of reached out to of needing a place. So when they know they're coming back the next day, they can actually kind of keep some stuff overnight. So it kind of becomes more cozy and comfortable.
Yeah, a little more like a home, a place to stay more than
Exactly.
just one night. And yeah, that's a really important point, is to remember those of us who can't lie under a blanket at home and stay warm. Human beings, pets as well. Take care of your pets. Make sure they're not out in this kind of weather.
And actually, that shelter can take people with pets. It has a designated room for LGBTQ people. And the city told me last night, the city of Cleveland told me last night that the warming center schedule is being extended. There'll be 12 days this month of warming center capacity, which has been much busier this month than it was last month.
And the cold is going to stay with us for a while. This is not just a little stretch for a couple of days.
The National Weather Service data showed that yesterday was kind of like the warm day. Yesterday was like the reprieve that we didn't realize and maybe missed. But tonight the low is -3 degrees, and it'll be below 20, if not single digits, for the next week.
Yeah, so we're going to have freezing temperatures for a very long stretch. A couple of bits of advice, by the way, from ODOT, or from AAA, actually, the American Automobile Association. It says avoid unnecessary trips, which it sounds like we are all planning to do.
Yeah.
Right? Slow down, adjust your speed, accelerate, and decelerate gently. I've got one of those hand paddles on my car that kind of shifts it down. It'll decelerate as it goes. A lot of the newer
That's
cars
cool.
have that.
I got to get a new car.
Yeah, it's not a fancy new car, but it's got that. And it slows you down, and that might be a good thing to use. You increase your following distance, you know your brakes and whether they're anti-lock or not. You maintain momentum, especially on hills. Don't use cruise control, says AAA, when you're in those situations. And make sure you're prepared. You got cell phone, car chargers, you have flashlights with extra batteries, first aid kit, all that kind of stuff. Just be ready. It may not be Armageddon, but it's always smart when one of these things comes to be ready. And speaking of Armageddon, Karen, this Sunday, we mark 48 years since the blizzard of 78. You and I were in elementary school back then when the snow and blizzards were fun. But that was a storm
Speak
for the
for
record
yourself.
books.
I'm not confirming that.
You know what? I might actually. No, I wasn't in high school yet. I was definitely in elementary school, a middle school maybe. But man, I saw these pictures, and I'm sure we'll be showing them when we have this show on television this evening as well from the Cleveland Public Library. Actually, they're up on our screen right now. If you look at some of those, that is a picture we're looking at. A guy standing on a snowdrift, and underneath him is what looks like maybe some pavement. It wasn't. It was the top of his car. And you see that in a parking lot, the shopping carts are abandoned. On highways, cars are abandoned. This happened in 1978.
Holy cow, that's a highway.
That's the highway. Yeah, they're stopped there. This guy's just sitting on his car in the highway. So when you think about that, man, we're going to dodge that, right, Karen?
I'm not a forecaster. I wouldn't want to be a meteorologist right now because I know snow totals are really difficult to come up with. But I should note that because of the blizzard of 78, you got the State House News Bureau because it was actually the statewide response to what the heck is going on that made public radio and TV stations around the state say, hey, we should have a bureau at the State House that gives us statewide news and can reach the governor and some of these people people when emergencies happen. So
So that was,
sometimes good things can happen.
yeah, was that in 78 or 79?
No, that was in 1980 by the time it all came together.
got
But
you.
it was just that necessary need for statewide news. And, a lot of people during the blizzard of 78, people were really stranded. I mean, you had parts of the state that were really inaccessible for weeks, as I recall. So it was tough. I hope we don't go that route because that's pretty difficult to think about right now.
So you started at the State House News Bureau in 1980.
I did not. I
1980.
would,
That's
no,
amazing to me.
That's when my colleague Bill Cohen started, and but yeah, I was just it's the access to state officials immediately and be able to distribute that around the state at that time when you didn't have social media and you didn't have all these other ways to communicate was really important, and so. Again, hopefully we won't get to the blizzard of 78. I understand the weather pattern was different then. So let's hope it holds.
That is not what's predicted, by the way. It's a bad
Yes.
storm. It's going all the way across the country. The people are going to get ice to the south, some snow to the north, but we're not talking about feet and feet and feet of snow. We're just talking about some cold and some snow, and it's going to be a little bit nasty. Power outages may happen as well. Hopefully you'll be spared, but they're likely coming this weekend due to the storm. And even on calm weather days, Ohio is having a hard time now keeping up with rising energy demand. One main driver of that increased demand is data centers. Columbus has become a key location for them, with one report concluding it's the second largest hub in the Great Lakes region. Those centers are popping up everywhere, including in Stark County. And so, Kelly, I wanted to bring you into the conversation on this. You've done some reporting on a data center that's expected to go in Perry Township. What about the location, and what do we know about it so far?
Yeah, so this is about 100 acres south of the Metallus steel plant on Faircrest Street. And the Perry Township Administrator, Jerry Cotter, has confirmed it's a planned data center, although the company that is out there moving dirt at this point, Panattoni Development Company, has said it's still in the early planning stages, and they're saying they're still evaluating multiple potential uses.
Across Ohio, we're looking at almost doubling the number of data centers. They are important for AI, which is artificial intelligence, which is going now. It's got all the servers and all that kind of stuff, and it's necessary really for the new economy. But on the other hand, huge electricity usage and water usage too. What do the leaders in Perry Township hope for the development? Are they concerned about those things, water usage, electricity, et cetera?
Yeah, so at this point, we don't have a lot of information about the number of employees or tax revenue expected. It is in a joint economic development district, so it will share any income tax with the city of Canton receiving 2% and Perry Township receiving 0.5%. So they're hoping that it will have some sort of economic benefit for the township. And as far as water goes, the city is expected to supply that. The water superintendent, Tyler Converse, has said they have an additional 4 to 6 million gallons of water that they could supply. So he's not entirely concerned about the amount of water that they'll be using, although they still have not received a estimated daily demand.
So there's another one planned in Canton, possibly too. So we're going to see these popping up all over the state. Let's talk about that. The other data centers planned for Ohio. I think now we have about 100. What's the plan?
Yeah, so the other location, there's at least one that seems to be all signs pointing towards a potential data center. That's another 80-acre site in Canton Township, recently annexed by the city, and that was purchased just recently for a large sum by Daymac Digital. And they've made an announcement that they are investing in data centers, particularly in Ohio. So this is a Dubai-based company that has actually a background in luxury real estate development. They actually built the first Trump-branded golf course in the Middle East. And so that is the other site I'm kind of keeping tabs on. There do seem to be a few small data centers maybe in existing buildings in the area, according to the datacentermap.com. And then there's, of course, the Bitdeer crypto mining facility being built in Massillon. But these would be the largest potential data centers in Stark.
And Karen, there'd be 77 more data centers in Ohio planned. There was a study that was done by the University of Virginia's Weldon Cooper Center. By 2030, data centers are expected to add 37,200 jobs and grow the state's gross domestic product by $4.7 billion in Ohio. They're also expected to really suck up the electricity in Ohio as well. And we talked in the roundtable about Ohio's approaching power generation cliff in the past. Are lawmakers still all in on data centers, and what solutions, if any, have been suggested?
Well, when they return, because they haven't been in session for a while, it's expected that they're going to take up some legislation that deals with this. I mean, part of the problem here is you've got there was this real desire and flux to or move to bring in data centers and all sorts of high tech outfits. I mean, you might remember back in 2022 when Intel became the state's largest public-private partnership at the time, and Central Ohio was going to be the Silicon Heartland. And now you've got some lawmakers who are saying maybe this wasn't the greatest idea in the world just because of the need for energy and water that those data centers do have. I mean, in the Central Ohio area, retail residential electricity prices have gone up between 7.5% and 13%. And so those kind of demands, when you've got people who are calling their lawmakers saying, I can't afford my electric bill anymore, that's a real concern here. So you've got some lawmakers who are saying, maybe we need to do some other things. Maybe you need to require data centers to start paying for some of the extra energy that they're using. So I anticipate this is going to be a big talking point, along with property taxes, which I think is going to be the biggest thing that lawmakers will talk about.
Yeah, and we mentioned Great Lakes is a big region for data centers, Chicago being sort of the heart of that, but Columbus also being high on that. And they're expected to consume as much electricity as 8 million households or 20 million people by 2030. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's
It
a lot.
is. It is a lot. And, there are questions about the regional transmission organization called PJM and what where Ohio is with that and what can be done in all these different areas. I mean, it's a complicated issue when you start talking about utilities and electricity and all that stuff. But this is the kind of thing that I think you're going to hear lawmakers talking about in an election year as people are saying these electric bills are too high.
All right. And let's talk about this. As demand rises, power outages are increasing. Follow up from our story last week, lawmakers are now pushing back on First Energy's request to lower reliability standards that would let them have more time to repair outages, that would let there be, before they were out of compliance, let there be more outages before they were called out of compliance. And now we're hearing some pushback from some state legislators.
Yeah, most of the state House Energy Committee sent the Public Utilities Commission a letter saying that they want the PUCO to shut down this idea. And this was a bipartisan letter from Republicans and Democrats on that committee because there's some real concerns about if you grant this request to First Energy and allow for the loosening of reliability standards, well, then AEP is going to want the same thing, and Duke Energy is going to want the same thing, and all of these other utilities around the state. So this is something to watch, I think, especially for First Energy customers, because obviously this is a highly concerning issue.
Right. Tristan Rader, the Democrat from Lakewood, said exactly that. He said, one of my fears moving forward is this is just the beginning. This is going to set a precedent. So we'll see how that goes. I know First Energy is saying, listen, the statistics or the level now is set on old information. If you get new information in there, then the reliability standards should be lessened. But the fact of the matter is, what does that mean, and does it set a bad precedent? So we'll keep an eye on that, or actually you will, and we'll listen to it when you tell us what's going on.
Yep.
All right. Parking in Cleveland is more convenient. You don't have to root around the glove box for coins anymore. You can use your phone, but it's also more expensive. And downtown, you have to pay to park even on the weekends. The new digital coinless metered system lets you park for up to 4 hours, but the rate increases each hour, and enforcement will be extended 7 days a week, except in Ohio City, where Sundays are free. Gabe, let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. I know when Mayor Bibb was running the first time, he said, we have got to become a city that moves into the 21st century. We can't be having coin-operated meters. And pretty quickly, it went to you can use your phone. Yeah. Now we're seeing a much different change, and I wonder what the reasoning is behind it.
Well, I remember we were on this show a couple years ago talking about the hybrid model of you could use the meter or you could use the new app. So now the quarter system is gone. If you got a couple quarters in your car,
I do, too.
Save it for Aldi. You can't bring it here. Instead, you have to use a Park mobile app. So you scan a QR code, or you sign in your app, and you type in your license plate number, the code of the street area you're on, the zone you're on, and then it went from $1 for an hour to it's now going to be $1.50 an hour plus a service fee, so it's going to be more like $1.85 ish for an hour. So
that's for the first 2 hours. The third hour is $3. The fourth hour is $4.50.
Yes, so it's increasing, and There's the train of thought that we're hearing from the city is that this is going to have more turnover in the parking spots. It's going to be better for businesses because more people will be able to come in and out of the spots. People won't be able to just park there over the weekend and just stay there over the weekend and take up spots from everybody else. But there is kind of this read between the lines or look behind the curtain situation where advocates who are very transit forward, walkability forward, had been advocating for this for a while. And at the time of implementation of making parking spaces more digital and less quarter driven, those advocates were yearning for this increased hours and increase over the weekend because to them, it has this idea where you may think it's a barrier to parking. Parking becomes a barrier. So you might think, okay, well, I got to worry about parking for only this amount of time. It's going to cost more money. Maybe I'll walk there. Maybe I'll take a train and then walk there. Maybe I'll take a bus. Maybe I'll take an Uber. So it is part of this being more walkability, transit forward ideology.
If you're a business owner, you might also worry maybe they just won't come.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's this idea where people are thinking, why would I go at all if I can't just have it as convenient as possible? And there is, Zaria Johnson, one of reporters, is currently covering kind of a battle between residents and business owners in Ohio City, where they're talking about putting in designated bus lanes and getting rid of valet parking. So
on West 25th.
On West 25th Street in Ohio City. So it does kind of tie in this, what benefits business owners versus what benefits people who want to just not worry about cars so much.
All right. We're going to have an in-depth conversation on that. This was a good one, but we go even deeper
Yes.
with some of the business owners, including Sam McNulty, who's one of the drivers of saying that bus rapid transit thing might not be the greatest thing to put here. We'll delve into that even more later in the week, but they have a discussion about the parking and why it's needed or what challenges there may be to it. We had that conversation earlier this week. Unfortunately, it was preempted by President Trump's comments. He was at the World Economic Forum at their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, and that came live on our air and preempted SOI. So on Monday, the Sound of Ideas will air that conversation. So if you didn't get a chance to hear it then, you'll get a lot more on parking.
And if I may, one more thing about the Park Mobile app that you have to use in order to park downtown or anywhere in the city on the street is that they can now monitor who's parking where and see what hotspots are better and see how they can service that. And I can tell you, we don't have any data yet, but there's at least one person on this panel who is currently using it.
Currently using, like, this
The
park
Park
right
Mobile
now.
app and parked on the street here in
The
Cleveland.
city already knew that.
Well, yes.
Big Brother
So,
is watching.
Here I am.
All right. Time now for a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the doubts Cleveland City Council has expressed about Mayor Justin Bibb's push to close Burke Lakefront Airport by the end of his second term, which just started. This is the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre, along with Kelly Byer. She's with the Canton Repository, and Gabriel Kramer is here as well from IdeaStream Public Media. And State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler joins us from Columbus. A note before we get back to the roundtable, be sure to check out our IdeaStream News Quiz. Each week it's created from stories you hear on WKSU, from IdeaStream, from our website, and our radio station here. The State House News Bureau's stories and the Ohio Newsroom as well. You get the quiz. You can have access to that at ideastream.org/quiz. It's a fun way to start your Friday. Cleveland City Council members are not yet sold on the Bibb administration's fire the jets approach to shutting down Burke Lakefront Airport. Mayor Justin Bibb has said he wants Burke shuttered by 2029. Council wants to know what would cover the 400 plus acres, who would benefit. They got a lot of questions, Gabe. Council held the first of many committee meetings on this. And the through line on that is how all these big plans for downtown translate to helping the city's residents and neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every mayoral election we have in Cleveland, the big topic of discussion is what's going to happen to Burke because it's an airport that is not used widely. It's certainly not used as widely as Hopkins is. I've never used it in my entire life of living in the region. And people wonder, could that space be better utilized for businesses, for green space? And it's, imagine in a city that lacks access to the lake, in a beautiful lake, and you'd think, a lot of people are yearning for ways to get to that lake. This seems to a lot of people, like the mayor, an obvious way to get access to the lake. But a lot of people on council are saying, well, this isn't really helping my residents on a day-to-day basis. It's going to cost a lot of money to to repair it, to turn it into whatever it needs to turn into, and the council people are not really seeing the immediate benefit to what happens to them. Plus, we think we get focused on downtown. For years, council people have been saying, well, there's been such a focus on downtown, developing downtown. What about our neighborhoods?
Yeah, I've lived in Cleveland my entire life as well, Northeast Ohio. Never used Burke.
Never, yeah.
Kelly, do you fly out of Burke all the time?
Can't say I have.
No, and if you listened last week, we talked to Karen. She lands her private jet here when she goes to Guardians games. But that is kind of the debate. It's like, why do you need an airport? It's not that itself doesn't serve the residents of Cleveland. I was surprised during that hearing, and there are going to be several more. And in fact, we are going to be doing a community tour. And right now, the tentative date is March 4th, but we're going to be having it at the concourse of the airport with the stakeholders. Stephanie Haney will lead a conversation. We want the public involved in that. We'll give you that information soon, but you can come and weigh in. Should it be an airport? What else should it be? And talk a little bit about this debate that's happening. But one of the things I was surprised about was that Mike Polensek, the longtime council member, the dean of Cleveland City Council, said, wait a minute, all these other places, all these problems are happening. Council has been cut in half. Our population is down. The Browns are moving out of downtown. And we have this airport. Isn't that unique? Shouldn't we talk about keeping it? I hadn't really heard that point of view. It's almost always been people saying, how do we get rid of Burke? But now you're hearing some folks that say, maybe we need an airport there.
Maybe it's beneficial. And I think, they talk about there's, we have schools that are closing. Like I said, the Browns leaving town, but, there's people who think that, so what Polensek said is, show me a plan that benefits the neighborhood in the city of Cleveland by Burke Airport going away. So they, I think it's not a complete no for Polensek, but I think it's how can we make sure that this benefits people who aren't going to be downtown? Is it going to be a place that people in Collinwood, which he oversees, can utilize the lakefront in that kind of way? Are there going to be more businesses popping up that they can utilize? Are they going to create jobs that people in his neighborhood can walk to, drive to, transit to in order to work? So I think, there's definitely, there needs to be more depth to what the mayor wants to satisfy council.
And do you think also at play here is that the mayor, when he wants to get things done, often does. And when we talked about tax increment financing districts, the council was like, wait a minute, we want more say in who benefits from those. When it came to the Browns moving out of downtown, there was a fight put up by the city, and then eventually the city agreed and said, give us $100 million and we're going to drop our lawsuit. Council said, wait a minute, we weren't consulted on that.
Right.
So this might be another thing where you're seeing these headlines where the mayor said, not only do I want to close it, but I want to close it within 4 years. And council's saying, hang on a second.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be able to weigh in.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've seen a lot in the last 4 years of Justin Bibb's tenure with council, this kind of the lack of almost camaraderie, or this almost this tussle of, who's really in charge of the city? Is it council? Is it mayor?
Yeah, and by the way, that happens with every administration and every council.
in every city.
And that might just be something that's cropping up here. We'll continue to cover that. But again, early March, we plan to convene a conversation. We'd love to have you be there and be part of it as well.
And there's currently no legislation in front of council. Just point it out.
These are
This is
hearings.
conversations.
The Transportation Committee is having hearings. They have another one scheduled in February. Then we're having our public session in March, and then I think they have another one in April and perhaps one even after that. So there are 4 hearings that are scheduled, as well as this public forum that we're going to be putting together. All right, moving on. Property owners in Ohio's largest counties are among those who will see their next property reappraisals delayed by a year. 16 counties, including Franklin, Hamilton, the big ones, and Cuyahoga, of course, and then others locally, Lake, Geauga, and Stark, are pushing back the process. Karen, Sarah Donaldson did some reporting on that. One reason given for the delay is that appraisers are stretched thin. Why are they stretched thin?
Well, nearly half the counties in the state have been doing reappraisals at the same time within this 6-year cycle. So that means that these appraisers are trying to get to a lot of different areas at the same time. And so this changes the schedule and gives them a little bit more breathing room. And the argument is that there's more efficiency in this, that it's, you slow it down a little bit so you have more opportunity to catch things as they go through. And they also want to look at the sales ratio studies to make sure that they're being as accurate as possible in terms of reevaluation.
I can help them out, and you don't have to come out and look at my house. The value went down by like half. So for tax purposes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you want that for tax purposes, but not if you're trying to sell it.
I'll never sell. I've been in that house forever. But let's also ask about property taxes are the big deal. It's the valuations have gone up, taxes have gone up. There's been all kinds of howling about what people are paying, and lawmakers have been putting together measures to try to deal with that. Will this delay in appraisal give them a little bit of time? Is there Is there something that's hand in glove in this?
Well, I mean, I think along with the bills that passed at the end of last year that would Republican sponsors say lower property taxes, and there were some Democrats who voted as well for these bills. These are bills that did some things that arguably will give a property tax break for many Ohioans. But when it comes to really big tax relief, these bills won't do that. There's a couple of bills that are out there. There's more than 50 bills that deal with property taxes that lawmakers have proposed that are in the pipeline at some point. Two of them came from not only there's been two big reports recommending changes to property tax law, and both of these were in both those reports. A circuit breaker, which would trigger a property tax cut at a certain level of a household's income, and then also an expansion of the homestead tax exemption. Those have been out there for a while, and lawmakers haven't done anything with those. Those could potentially involve the state coming in and putting some money toward this to help schools and other entities that get property taxes be held harmless. So that's going to be the question, is what is the state willing to put into this to try to lower property taxes for people, because people are struggling and suffering, and you've still got this abolish the property tax proposal that's out there. You got volunteers who are trying to get that onto the ballot this fall. It's a volunteer effort, but you've got a lot of people who are angry.
A lot of those property taxes fund schools, and here's a twist. The Buckeye Local School District in Medina says it will build a new high school without increasing property taxes for residents. So the district plans to build the new school by the summer of 2029. How are they going to pay for it, Gabe?
So what's crazy about this is that they've had an estimated 30-ish to 40-ish levies in the last however many years, and most of them have failed. So the superintendent is saying, over the years, they've actually been able to save up money, about $40 million, which seems like a big lot of money to just save and have set aside, anticipating the need for this. And it's going to cost them about $60 to $65 million to build the school. So the rest of it will be covered by a bond that the school will pay over time. But yeah, they've saved up a lot of money thus far.
I mean, that's admirable that they're able to do that, but I wonder if that just gives more fuel to the argument of people that vote no on levies that says, well, they don't really need it. I mean, they got $40 million. They can pay for a school. Why would they ask me for a tax increase?
Right. That's a really good point. And even the superintendent said, look, I don't want to pay more taxes either, but it's something that they need, something that the school is in dire need of. I mean, people are complaining that the school is old. It was built in 1957, which means it's a school that my father attended, Buckeye High, class of 1970.
Beautiful.
And so it's a school that he had been using, and teachers are complaining that there are not enough electrical outlets, which seems like an insane problem to have in 2025. That we're even moving on. We should be far removed from that problem. And teachers are complaining there's a weird smell, which seems trivial, but I don't know what my dad left there in 1970, but there's the weird smell. But it's an outdated building, and as we're moving into a more digital space, schools certainly want more and more amenities to be able to serve that.
And we can't attribute that smell to you, though, because unlike your father, you didn't go to Buckeye. You're a Medina Bee.
Go Bees.
All right. Fair enough. I just want to make sure that they got their equal.
Exactly.
credit here.
I grew up on the other side of the tracks.
Got it.
The right side, they might say.
Governor Mike DeWine has endorsed a bill that would expand security protection provided by the Ohio State Highway Patrol, which now covers only him. Senate Bill 308 would earmark $10 million to cover the state's lieutenant governor and candidates for governor and lieutenant governor, as well as the governor and lieutenant governor elect. And Karen, I think many found it surprising that only the governor receives security protection. Is there any indication why DeWine has offered his support of this? And by the way, it would also include any candidate he deems needs protection.
Yeah, I think this came about when it was introduced not too long after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And so there was some concern about political violence being an issue for the sitting governor, also the lieutenant governor, because the lieutenant governor can be a higher profile position. I mean, we've got a pretty high profile lieutenant governor right now in terms of Jim Tressel, the former Ohio State football coach, but also for candidates who are running for governor, because Ohio tends to attract some attention when there's a race for governor. I mean, you've got two candidates right now, Vivek Ramaswamy and Dr. Amy Acton, who have gotten some national attention. And so I think that's part of the reason why DeWine has said he's interested in this. And what I think is interesting is that this bill was introduced last October and hasn't even had a first hearing yet. And yet we're talking about it like it's moving forward quickly. We don't know if it's going to move forward quickly, but certainly Vivek Ramaswamy's security detail situation makes it so that it might.
Yeah, and I would think, I mean, the guy's a billionaire. He probably has his own security. But the question
Well,
now, no?
Well, I mean, he does, but there was some questions. He had to fire the firm that was doing his
Oh, that's right.
security
Yeah, we
because
talked about
of
that.
yeah, and so I think that the timing of discussions about this bill is coming right as there are this discussions about Ramaswamy, who, like you said, is a billionaire and has fired his security team. And would this bill pass in time for him to get a state-paid security team? Well, it's not going to pass immediately, but
Right. And I know this isn't about particularly named candidates, but Amy Acton had people protesting in front of
Yeah.
her home when she was the health director of the state during COVID. So there is some history there too.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the reasons why. I mean, she said that she resigned because of the orders that she was being asked to sign that she felt were making people unsafe. But yeah, there were some very serious demonstrations in 2020, not only at the state house where people showed up with guns, but also at her personal house where people showed up with guns.
All right. Let's move to Stark County. The parents of Gabby Petito, she's the young woman whose disappearance and murder garnered national attention in 2021, will visit Stark County next month to raise awareness about domestic violence. Authorities say Petito's fiance strangled her while they traveled together. It was a big story. You probably saw it. There have been documentaries on it as well. Her death led to a national conversation about domestic violence. And Kelly, who's bringing her parents to Stark County?
Yeah, so her parents, Nicole and Jim Schmidt, they had the Gabby Petito Foundation. And so they've partnered with the Stark County Prosecutor's Office to come in on February 12th and talk about her story and also the warning signs of domestic violence. And then the following day, they are training some of the local first responders and organizations that actually work directly with survivors.
So the first one, February 12th, the next one, the day after, February
February
13th, both at First Christian Church in Canton.
Correct.
Let's talk about, what they will share, because advocates say too often domestic violence is missed. Why is that?
Yeah, so the victim witness director, Kim Stanley, at the prosecutor's office has said that there might be signs like there were in Gabby's relationship, but a lot of times, unless you know what you're looking for, you might miss them. So that is something her parents said they weren't able to identify. But the number of domestic violence in Stark County has been high, so this comes at a pretty critical time.
Yeah, in 2024, domestic violence-related incidents and homicides increased by 550%.
That is, what they've said, and they did decrease last year, but the number of strangulations upticked. So that was a concerning sign, Stanley said, because that kind of signals that numbers of violence could escalate and potentially lead to more violence or more lethal violence.
Yeah, what a great way to honor your daughter is to try to make the world safer for others. Fewer Ohioans are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act plans after additional subsidies to offset costs put into effect during the pandemic expired last month. Karen, Joe Ingles has been looking into this issue. How substantial of a decline in Obamacare enrollments are we seeing here in Ohio?
Well, early estimates, and the enrollments just ended on January 15th, so these could change. Early estimates suggest that 20% of Ohioans who got health insurance through the Affordable Care Act with those subsidies last year are not going to re-enroll and get health insurance through the ACA this year because of those subsidies that have expired. I mean, there are subsidies that were passed when Obamacare passed in 2010. They were expanded in 2021, and then the expanded subsidies lapsed at the end of last year. You might recall that the whole federal government shutdown was really hinging on whether those should be renewed, and they weren't renewed. There's a vote. The U.S. House has voted to renew them, but now it has to go through the Senate. But what you have is a lot of people who said that their premiums have gone up so much that they can't afford health insurance
So what do they
anymore.
do? They just don't have health insurance?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, we're talking about 105,000 Ohioans who have dropped their coverage they got through Obamacare from last year to this year. And so that, of course, means they don't have health insurance, which was part of the point of the Affordable Care Act, was to try to solve the problem of too many people not having health insurance and how that does drive up costs for places like emergency rooms and for local governments and really state government that has to help with that.
Right, and this is a population that doesn't necessarily qualify for Medicaid, which is also, by the way, this being more stringent in terms of applying for that every 6 months and having a work requirement that's going to be coming. But there's an income requirement to be able to get Medicaid coverage. These are people that don't necessarily qualify for that, but also can't pay the high premiums.
And they also don't have the option of getting health insurance through their employer, which a lot of people, of course, do get their health insurance through their employer. So it just brings up the whole question. And Ohio is not the only state that's dealing with this because, again, these are national expanded subsidies that were going out to anybody who is getting health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. And there are a lot of people who are saying, with all the rising costs of all this other stuff, I can't afford the increase. And we're talking about increases that are well into the double-digit percentage-wise for some folks. And so it's really a situation where people are saying, I would just go ahead and forego coverage and hope for the best rather than try to afford this.
I know that Ohio's senators have both been involved in trying to come up with some solutions. Let's just talk about what they have done and really where Congress members stand in Ohio as well.
Well, I think Senator John Husted has said that he supports an extension, a 2-year extension, apparently, but he also wants to do some other things because Republicans have been saying that really the whole system is problematic and they want major reform. I think some want to go to kind of health savings accounts in a way rather than what they say is benefiting health insurers in a system that right now they say that the ACA is part of the reason why health insurance is so expensive. But you've got this impasse here, but it's the people who are caught in the middle of it that's really concerning because you have a lot of people now who do not have health insurance who did last year. And, it's not like they immediately lost all their health problems and everything's great. What are they going to do?
Right. And you mentioned Senator John Husted. Senator Bernie Moreno was part of bipartisan talks on legislation. Those have stalled at this moment, though, according to NBC News. So we'll see what happens with the marketplace as that comes on. Yeah.
I mean, you've got some people who say that their premium will be more than their mortgage. I mean, that's unaffordable for a lot of people who are in this group.
Yeah, we can do better. All right, time now to take another quick break. A few more stories to go, including what exactly is the right temperature for your office or house when it's cold outside. What do you set the thermostat at? This is the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre, and we'll all be right back. Glad to have you back here on the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre, and I'm here with our friend Gabriel Kramer from IdeaStream Public Media, our new friend, that's Kelly Beyer. She's from the Canton Repository, and, of course, our old friend, but I don't mean old in that sense. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. Karen Kassler is with us as well. The no tax on overtime provision of the federal budget bill signed by the president last summer may not benefit working Ohioans as much as expected, according to an Ohio policy think tank. Karen, Joe Engels looked into this recent report by the left-leaning Policy Matters Ohio. What did that report say?
Well, that report said that basically this no tax on overtime is really not exactly what it was set out to be, in a sense. That may have been a marketing strategy, according to, this is Policy Matters Ohio, which is a progressive leaning group. They say that more than 90% of Ohio workers won't be able to benefit from this proposal. It's actually not really no tax on overtime. It's a temporary federal income tax deduction. And so they say about 9% of workers will benefit, and that average will only be about $1,400 in terms of off their taxes.
And then they say as people prepare to file their taxes too, the write-off could be less than expected?
Yeah, I mean, $1,400 is not a significant amount for some people. For other people, it certainly is. And Policy Matters Ohio says that most of the benefits of this will go to households that already earn the most. But this is basically only about half of the overtime can be written off here. And so I think that this is kind of what they're going to conclude about the no tax on tips as well, that it's a federal income tax deduction and it's temporary. It actually expires in a couple of years. And so, it was sold as being no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, but it's a little bit more complicated than that.
All right. Auditor Keith Faber, the state auditor, said that when we talk about fraud in government in Ohio, it's really more cyber criminals than it is employee theft. And he had something to say about that this week.
Yeah, when I sat down with him for our TV show, The State of Ohio, he wanted to talk about this because not only is it something that individuals are dealing with, because you get the phone calls and you get the phishing attempts and the hackers and all this stuff, but that's happening to local governments too. And it's things like ransomware where they hold the data ransom while they expect the local governments to pay up to get that data back, or redirecting of vendor payments, basically calling up or sending an email saying, hey, I paved the parking lot of City Hall. You need to send the check to this place, not that other account. These are the things that start to add up. And so he's very concerned about how cybercrime is getting more complicated, getting more sophisticated, and local governments are getting caught.
Yeah, one of those ransomwares crippled Cleveland recently, and they paid up. We don't get details about exactly how much, but those things can become pretty expensive.
Absolutely. And they also, while they show real vulnerabilities in the system, it takes a while for the system to rebuild and to make sure that those vulnerabilities are taken care of. And it's scary to think of your data. I mean, we all have data that's out there that's unprotected because of all of our actions on social media and online banking and things like that, unfortunately. But this is just for local governments. They hold a lot of personal information about us.
And the weak link, as it is in almost everything, is human beings.
Yeah. And that's why Faber says, for instance, with these vendor redirects, instead of allowing some of the stuff to happen online, require people to come in and present ID and show, yeah, I'm the vendor who paid the parking lot. I really need the check to be going to a different place. If you show up, if you have to show up, well, that kind of cuts down on the cybercrime because that's a real person.
All right. Passenger traffic at the Akron-Canton Airport soared last year with nearly 1 million people passing through its gates. That's the highest number since 2017. It's part of a national trend in which the Federal Aviation Administration said 2025 had the highest traffic in 15 years. How big of an increase was it, Kelly, in Akron-Canton?
So that's about 23.5% over the previous year, a little over 938,000 commercial passengers last year. And that was something the airport's president and CEO attributed to confidence in the airport, the number of airline expansions there, as well as just regional demand for air travel.
Are there more flight options?
It currently has 23 nonstop flight destinations, and the biggest news out of last year was that Breeze Airways announced they're establishing their first Midwest crew base there. So there are 4 airlines that operate out of the airport, and this year Breeze is adding new nonstop flights to Savannah, and American Airlines will be adding a 5th daily flight to Charlotte.
All right. And at Hopkins, Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, there was a slight decrease, Gabe, in traffic last year, attributed in part to lengthy government shutdown that caused widespread cancellations. But they also have something new to offer this year. I don't know if it'll bring in more passengers, but it'll give you a place to do some work if you are there, if you're doing a layover, if you got there a little early. Yeah,
they're calling them Jobber Box pods. It's like a soundproof room that you can use electrical outlets, Wi-Fi, LED lighting. $15 for 30 minutes. So
$15.
$15 for 30 minutes of it. Yeah.
All right. I guess I could do that if I need some silence and get some work done.
I mean, I'm not there. I mean, it seems like for people who are there for a layover, which I've never been at Hopkins for a layover.
Yeah, but if you're there really early and you got some work to do, I usually sit on the windowsill they have there on the way to the concourse.
Yeah.
But this might be a little bit
better.
$50
cheaper to do that.
We have 1 minute to talk about the Browns coaching search because you and I probably are the only ones that care about this. But all these guys that the Browns wanted are taking jobs somewhere else. Mike McDaniel is going to be the offensive coordinator in San Diego. Is it Jesse Minter?
Yeah.
He's taken a job with the Ravens as their head coach. Yeah. What's going on with the Browns search?
Well, what's interesting is some of these guys are taking assistant jobs instead of the head coaching job in Cleveland because it's a more attractive, perhaps more stable job. We see a lot of volatility in the head coaching position, but they still need to fulfill what's called the Rooney Rule, which means they have to interview at least 2 racial minorities or a woman. And they had a candidate, Mike McDaniel, who fulfills that Rooney Rule, drop out of the race. So they still need to interview somebody to replace him. And that becomes kind of a mess that may seem as tokenizing. But they need to fulfill that, and they should probably have somebody next week, perhaps.
The 2 names I keep hearing on social media are Grant Udinsky and a guy named Shielhaus.
Nate Shielhaus. A couple of young guys.
Couple young guys. We'll see what happens. And by the way, a lot of people don't care. So whatever.
Yeah.
I guess we do. That storm that stalks toward Ohio is coming. What exactly is the best temperature for your house when you're stuck indoors? Well, the Department of Energy weighed in with USA Today, saying the perfect temp to set your thermostat is 68 degrees. They allowed that a bump to 70 works when it's frigid. And I wonder if that's high enough. I'm assuming, Gabe, it's not.
No, not for me. No, I'm much high. I mean, I'm like 72-ish. If it's real cold, I'm like 73, 74, which I get a lot of people is high. But
Wear a blanket.
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Something.
My face gets cold. I wear a ski mask.
And some slippers. I'm actually vary, but I'm usually in the 68 to 70 range. So
Okay. You said you were going to be under a blanket.
little
at
house
home,
coat and slippers, and yeah.
Okay. And Karen, yours is like
I'm-
55 degrees, right?
I'm weird. I'm seriously 62. That's what I have
Okay,
mine
that's
set at all the
cool. What
time.
is
Okay,
happening?
we are not visiting Karen, especially this weekend.
I have a wonderful gas fireplace, so that's that helps a lot.
I just turn it up till it's warm. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, feels good now, and then we pay the piper later.
Yeah.
All right, that wraps up our show for today. My thanks really to you, Kelly Beyer from the Canton Repository, part of the USA Today Network. Great debut on the roundtable. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's
All right,
great
and
to be here.
Gabriel Kramer, good to have you here as well.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. And Karen Kassler, stay warm. Good to have you.
Nice to be here.
All right.